Continuing from the previous chapter, Shirkurin of the demonic rock dynasty never imagined that Lin Dong would unleash a spirit martial art, a technique even more powerful than creation martial arts. Before Lin Dong, Shirkurin, who had reached the second nirvana stage, seemed utterly vulnerable and powerless. A crisp sound resonated slowly in midair, causing countless people's eyes to narrow sharply. They witnessed that beneath an ancient giant hand, the dark golden light, concentrating all of Shirkuin's might and capable of destroying any first nirvana stage expert, began to crack rapidly. As the crack spread, it exploded into countless light fragments across the sky. It was a display of sheer, overwhelming force. Spirit martial art had reached such terrifying levels of power. With his assault crushed, Shirkuin's face turned deathly pale. His internal energy churned violently, and he could no longer contain it. A mouthful of blood spurted out, his aura weakening significantly. Clearly, the backlash had injured him. Spirit martial art. Shirkuin stared in disbelief, the blood on his lips left unwiped. Was this truly the legendary spirit martial art that surpassed creation martial arts? How could it be so formidable? How could this brat be so fortunate? How could he possibly possess a spirit martial art? Shirkuin roared in his heart, filled with resentment. Such a martial art could only be cultivated with the inheritance marks from ancient sects, making it extremely difficult to acquire. Even with the might of the demonic rock dynasty, they hadn't obtained one. Yet, here it was in the hands of Lin Dong, someone from a lower-tier dynasty. How could he possibly accept this? This kid doesn't deserve such martial arts. The bitterness in his heart turned into hatred, surging through Shirkuin's veins. His eyes reddened as he glared at Lin Dong. If he could obtain such a spirit martial art, he could truly make it onto the Nirvana rankings and become a distinguished presence on this ancient battlefield. In the future, he might even catch the eye of a super sect, paving the way for boundless prospects. Hmph! But just as hatred swirled in Shirkuin's eyes, Lin Dong, who had been watching him closely, let out a cold snort. A murderous glint flickered in his eyes. With a thought, the ancient giant hand that had shattered the dark golden light once again shot forward, thundering toward Shirkuin with lightning speed. As the intense pressure and wind noise reached him, Shirkuin suddenly snapped back to reality, breaking out in a cold sweat. He retreated rapidly, shouting urgently, "Lin Dong, I'll admit your strength today, but the grudges between you and the demonic rock dynasty won't end here. There won't be a next time. Today, you will remain in the Pill River." Lin Dong's voice was icy cold, filled with killing intent. He knew Shirkuin was ruthless, vengeful, and indeed quite capable. Such an enemy, if left unchecked, would undoubtedly pose a significant threat in the future. While Lin Dong wasn't afraid, it would be best to eliminate any potential trouble entirely. With Lin Dong's chilling voice still hanging in the air, the ancient giant hand, seemingly tearing through space, flashed and appeared above the retreating Shirkuin. Without mercy, it struck down. Golden shield. In the moment the ancient giant hand descended, Shirkuin felt his blood freeze. He sensed a strong aura of death, and his pupils contracted sharply. A shrill voice echoed from his mouth. A radiant golden halo quickly expanded from Shirkuin's body, forming the sturdiest of defenses, shielding him within. The ancient giant hand showed no hesitation in the face of the brilliant golden shield. It continued its unhurried descent. The palm, ancient and seemingly solid, appeared as if it were carved with deep ravines, extraordinarily mysterious. The ancient giant hand eventually landed on the seemingly impenetrable golden shield. Instantly, the golden shield emitted a series of crisp, ringing chimes. Next, everyone saw golden ripples rapidly spreading from the shield. These ripples expanded faster and faster until they covered every inch of the golden shield. It was evident that the shield's defensive capabilities had been pushed to their limits, desperately trying to resist Lin Dong's lethal assault. Break! Lin Dong's eyes were as cold as ice. His shout was thunderous. With his shout, the ancient giant hand pressed down harder. The golden shield, already at its breaking point, finally shattered with a loud crash, utterly disintegrating into countless pieces. The golden shield shattered, and Shirkuan, now bereft of his final defense, finally displayed a trace of fear on his face. But at this moment, he had no chance to dodge. The ancient giant hand inevitably came crashing down, striking his body heavily. A deep, muffled sound echoed from Shirkuan's body. He plummeted like a meteor, crashing heavily into the ground below. The earth trembled, a massive crater forming upon impact. Shirkuan's body lay half-buried in the debris, his aura weak to the extreme. Even the primordial energy within him showed signs of collapse. The entire area fell silent. Those with keen senses could detect the faint, nearly lifeless aura emanating from the crater where Shirkuan lay. They couldn't help but swallow nervously, and when they looked back at Lin Dong, there was a newfound fear in their eyes. To bring a second Nirvana stage expert to the brink of death with a single strike. Such power and skill were terrifyingly intimidating to them. At this point, in their minds, Lin Dong's reputation might rival that of the true overlords of the Northwest region. Lin Dong's gaze remained cold as he stared at the crater. With a slight gesture of his hand, a bright light shot out from Shirkuan's body and landed in his hand. It was an ancient key, the very ancient key that unlocked the ancient secret repository. Lin Dong had always suspected it had more uses than he was aware of. Now that he had defeated Shirkuan, the ancient key held by the demonic Rock Dynasty naturally fell into his possession. Big brother. At this moment, Shirkuan and the others were utterly terrified. They scrambled down in a panic, rushing into the crater to pull out the blood-covered and severely unconscious Shirkuan. Quick, retreat. Seeing Shirkuan's grievous injuries, Shirkuan and his companions were paralyzed with fear, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. They picked up Shirkuan, not daring to look Lin Dong in the eye. Any malice they previously harbored had been completely overwhelmed by fear. After today's confrontation, they understood that the demonic Rock Dynasty would never again have the power to contend with Lin Dong. On this brutal ancient battlefield, the demonic Rock Dynasty had served as a stepping stone for Lin Dong's reputation, which now resonated throughout the Northwest region. The conflict between them ultimately ended with Lin Dong's complete victory. As the defeated, the demonic Rock Dynasty would find it hard to rise again. Lin Dong's expression remained indifferent as he watched the fleeing remnants of the demonic Rock Dynasty, resembling defeated dogs. He did not pursue them. Among the demonic Rock Dynasty, Shirkuan was the only one he considered a threat. Now, Shirkuan was nearly crippled by his previous strike. Even if he recovered in the future, he would find it difficult to improve his skills for years. Without Shirkuan, a stabilizing force, the demonic Rock Dynasty's prestige on the ancient battlefield would plummet several ranks. Some of their old enemies might not miss this perfect opportunity. As for whether they could survive such fatal threats, that was not something Lin Dong cared about. With the demonic Rock Dynasty's retreat, the area gradually relaxed. From various angles, gazes filled with a hint of reverence swept over Lin Dong. No one now looked down on Lin Dong for coming from a lower-tier dynasty. They all understood that the skills this young man possessed were something even a high-tier dynasty like the demonic Rock Dynasty could not withstand. In this ancient battlefield, true strength was the one undeniable and unchallengeable truth. Aren't you leaving yet? In midair, Lin Dong's gaze slowly shifted downward toward Wang Lai and his companions. His voice was calm, but held no trace of politeness. Hearing Lin Dong's blunt words, Wang Lai and the other two's faces twitched, but they dared not utter a word in return. Instead, they promptly turned and, in a flurry of panic, fled with their troops. Having witnessed the earlier scene, they knew all too well that with Lin Dong's strength, it was entirely possible for him to eliminate them. In the face of such overwhelming power, putting on a brave front would be a fool's errand. Around the Pill River, countless spectators clicked their tongues in awe. With just a simple, casual remark, Lin Dong had frightened 3 high-tier dynasties into a hasty retreat. This kind of intimidating power meant that, in the Northwest region, Lin Dong's name would now be counted among the few most formidable figures. Lin Dong watched the hasty retreat of Wang Lai and his group, his expression calm and unperturbed. Then, slowly, he descended from mid-air. At this moment, The area surrounding the Pill River remained enveloped in silence. Those who looked at Lin Dong did so with eyes full of awe and reverence, as if no one dared to break the quiet until he spoke. However, Lin Dong had little interest in engaging with these onlookers. He glanced at the ancient cultivation platform behind him. He knew that many of them remained here largely because of that platform. Let's go. We've been cultivating here for 2 days. Those guys have probably already started delving deeper into the ancient secret repository. We need to hurry up, Lin Dong said with a smile to Little Yin. Now that his strength had greatly increased, he was qualified to face the true experts head-on. The journey into the ancient secret repository ahead would be extraordinarily intense. Though the Pill River contained abundant nirvana chi, making it an excellent place to cultivate, Lin Dong knew that the true treasures of the ancient secret repository were not confined to this river. Deeper within, there were even more mysterious and powerful treasures. Thus, Lin Dong decisively abandoned this excellent cultivation environment in favor of a greater goal. After all, he still needed to find the life and death reincarnation pill for Little Mink. All right, Little Yin agreed without objection, as usual. Seeing this, Lin Dong didn't linger any longer. With a swift motion, he turned into a streak of red light and shot off into the distance, with Little Yin following closely behind. Not long after Lin Dong left, he sensed a sudden burst of primordial energy fluctuations from the Pill River behind him, accompanied by shouts and curses. He couldn't help but chuckle. Those people had finally lost patience and begun fighting over the cultivation platform, hadn't they? Heh, kid. I didn't expect you could cultivate the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger to this level. You've got some skills, Little Mink appeared suddenly, his gaze filled with surprise as he looked at Lin Dong and laughed. The Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger is not just a creation martial art. I simply couldn't comprehend it before. Now that I've broken through to the Nirvana stage, I've sensed a deeper level of cultivation for it, Lin Dong replied with a smile. Indeed, it was only at the moment of his breakthrough to the Nirvana stage that he discovered a deeper cultivation method for the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger. The person who created this martial art wasn't an ordinary figure. The aura they left behind is stronger than mine was at my peak, Little Mink said, his eyes uncharacteristically solemn. The Great Wilderness Emperor, the one who created this martial art, was called that. Lin Dong nodded slightly. This was a piece of information he had gleaned from the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger. He wasn't sure if the title Great Wilderness Emperor was a name or a designation, but just from the title, it was clear that this person must have been a significant figure in ancient times. The Great Wilderness Emperor. In those ancient times, anyone who took on the title of emperor was no ordinary person. Little Mink murmured to himself. Then he smiled again, saying, "It seems you've had quite a bit of luck. Spirit martial arts are powerful because of the residual spiritual essence left by their creators. The Great Wilderness Emperor wasn't a small figure. Even a trace of his essence would be enough to shake the heavens and earth. This martial art isn't a common one, even among spirit martial arts. Spirit martial arts also had different levels of strength, divided into upper, middle, and lower tiers. The ranking depended on the strength of the spiritual essence left by the creator and the creator's own power. A figure like the Great Wilderness Emperor, who created the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger, must have been quite formidable. What are you planning to do next?" Little Mink asked again. "I'm heading deeper in. The life and death reincarnation pill is likely to be in those places," Lin Dong pondered. He knew that those eligible to enter the deeper parts of the ancient secret repository to seek treasures were no ordinary characters or factions. At least, figures like those from the demonic rock dynasty would only be considered average there. Competing for treasures in such a place would not be an easy task. Hearing the mention of the life and death reincarnation pill, Little Mink's eyes clearly sparkled with interest. Then he chuckled. In this ancient secret repository, which should be the site of the ancient sect alliance, there are bound to be some ancient sect inheritances deep within. If we're lucky, we might even find heaven-tier spiritual treasures or spirit martial arts. Hearing this, Lin Dong grinned. Having experienced the might of the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Finger, he was naturally eager for those spirit martial arts. If they could indeed obtain such treasures, it would certainly be worthwhile. As they conversed, their speed didn't diminish at all. As they moved further away from the Pill River and deeper into the ancient secret repository, the sky around them grew increasingly crowded with people flying in different directions. Many had excited expressions on their faces. Rumors spread that some had discovered the remains of a sect in certain locations. Everyone here understood what ancient remains represented. No one could say for sure if they held sect inheritances, so regardless of whether the rumors were true or false, most people were eager to investigate. Along the way, Lin Dong did indeed witness a sect's remains. It was a large floating island, and the ruins of a sect on the island were relatively intact. One could vaguely see ancient characters on a mountain peak, seemingly identifying it as an ancient sect called the Bone sect. At this moment, the skies above the island were filled with people who had come upon hearing the news, rushing madly into the ruins. Occasionally, primordial energy fluctuations erupted violently, clearly indicating fights breaking out over certain items. Lin Dong took a quick look and then shook his head disinterestedly. This so-called Bone sect didn't seem to be a significant player in the sect alliance, so it probably didn't contain anything valuable. As Lin Dong expected, after those people searched the sect ruins inside and out several times, they still found nothing worthwhile. The entire island was filled with curses, creating a somewhat comical scene. Lin Dong watched this scene with a smile and shook his head, about to turn and leave. Just then, several figures flew over from the distance, shouting excitedly to their companions as they arrived. His gaze shifted toward a group not far ahead, where people were speaking excitedly. Although their voices were quite soft, Lin Dong's keen hearing caught every word. A complete sect ruin has appeared again in the southwest. The ruin still has an energy barrier protecting it. There must be something good inside. Pfft. We've come across several sect ruins along the way, and we've gotten nothing out of them. This time it's real. Quite a few dynasties have already rushed over there. Heh, I've heard 3 lucky fellows have already obtained the sect marks, which means they can enter the ruins and gain the inheritance at any time. Oh, sect marks? Someone already got them? Who are these lucky individuals? It's funny, actually. The 3 who got the sect marks aren't from any high-tier dynasty. They're from a low-tier one. Now those 3 unfortunate fellows are trapped. All it takes is to force them to hand over the sect marks, and one can enter the ruins to gain the inheritance. A low-tier dynasty? Heh, those 3 sure don't know their limits. They may have the opportunity, but they don't have the fortune to enjoy it. Which dynasty are they from? A tall, thin man sneered. Judging by the primordial energy waves emanating from him, he was clearly at the nirvana stage. I think they're from the Great Yan Dynasty or something. Who cares about such a low-tier dynasty? Right now, those 3 are probably crying tears of regret. The messenger replied uncertainly. Lin Dong, who had been listening to this conversation, suddenly froze. His eyes narrowed slightly. The Great Yan Dynasty, 3 individuals? The answer seemed quite obvious. Those 3 must be Mo Ling and his companions, who had separated from Lin Dong at Thunder Rock Valley. He hadn't expected them to enter the ancient secret repository as well, and judging by the situation, they had also stumbled upon some fortuitous opportunity. Lin Dong exhaled lightly and, with a swift movement, appeared before the group of people. Without wasting any words, he extended his hand. A surge of immense primordial energy erupted, forming a force that pinned the group down firmly. Where is that sect ruin? Lin Dong asked casually, glancing at the frightened group caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. A first Nirvana stage expert. Sensing the violent energy waves emanating from Lin Dong, the group gasped, exchanged nervous glances, and quickly pointed in a direction, not daring to delay. Seeing this, Lin Dong released the pressure and turned to leave. May I ask, friend, which high-tier dynasty you come from? One of them quickly inquired as they saw Lin Dong about to leave. They knew that if they could draw Lin Dong to their side, their chances of seizing the sect ruins would increase significantly. Me? I come from the low-tier dynasty you mentioned earlier, the Great Yan Dynasty. Lin Dong paused for a moment, then seemed to chuckle before swiftly vanishing into the distance, leaving the group stunned and speechless. He's actually from the Great Yan Dynasty. When did such a low-tier dynasty produce someone like this? One of them murmured as they watched Lin Dong's figure recede into the distance. The tall, thin man furrowed his brows, as if he had just realized something. Moments later, his eyes widened in shock, and his voice trembled slightly. He's Lin Dong, the one who defeated Shirkuan of the demonic rock dynasty at the Pill River. The Shirkuan who had already stepped into the second Nirvana stage. The others' expressions also changed, their gazes becoming more complex. Who would have thought those three unlucky fellows would have such a formidable backer? However, holding onto a sect mark under the covetous eyes of so many dynasties is no easy task. In the misty space filled with spatial rifts, two figures darted through like lightning, appearing at the edge of their vision in a flash. These two figures were Lin Dong and Little Yin. Originally, Lin Dong had intended to head directly to the depths of the ancient secret repository, but an unexpected turn of events occurred midway. Mo Ling and his two companions had been with him for quite some time, and Lin Dong had come to regard them as friends. Now, upon hearing they were in trouble, his nature dictated that he wouldn't stand idly by. The news of the newly discovered sect ruins had clearly spread through the area at an astonishing speed. As Lin Dong and Little Yin hurried in that direction, they saw many figures continuously rushing in from all directions. It was evident that they all shared the same destination. It seems those sect ruins are indeed real. Seeing this scene, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed in contemplation. Most of the dynasties in this space seemed to be moving swiftly in response to the rumors. They weren't blindly following, but given the current situation, it was likely that the sect ruins were different from those in other places. Otherwise, so many experts wouldn't be drawn to it. This could be troublesome, Lin Dong muttered to himself. So many powerful experts and dynasties were eyeing the sect ruins, but such intact ruins always had extremely strong defenses. Only those who obtained a sect mark could enter and receive the inheritance. As such, the sect mark had become a hot potato. Countless people coveted it. If the ones who obtained the marks were powerful figures with significant influence, perhaps others would hesitate to act. However, unfortunately, Mo Ling and his two companions were clearly not at that level. Their origin from a low-tier dynasty like the Great Yan Dynasty would only draw more disdain. In this situation, the sect mark in their hands would not only fail to bring them any inheritance, but would likely lead to disaster. An innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. To many experts in these ruins, Mo Ling and his companions did not have the qualifications to possess the sect mark. They had only two choices: hand over the sect mark or surrender their lives. Without sufficient strength, even a heaven-sent opportunity could turn into a catastrophe in the next moment. Lin Dong pursed his lips slightly, then suddenly looked up into the distance. Far away, he saw an enormous floating island, much larger than any he had seen on his journey. On the island, energy fluctuations were faintly spreading out. Is this the place? Staring at the vast island, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. On the vast island, the air was filled with noise and excitement. Figures hovered above like locusts, their chaotic voices blending together and spreading far and wide. At this moment, all eyes on the island were focused in one direction, the center of the floating island. There, an ancient palace stood. Though somewhat dilapidated, it was much more intact than the ruins seen earlier. Moreover, a faint red glow emanated from the palace, enveloping it. This was likely the main reason the palace remained intact despite the passage of time. Within that red glow, a tall stone tablet stood, its surface faintly revealing large, ancient characters. Qinyun Sect, one of the Alliance protector sects. The people present might not have known much about the history of the ancient secret repository, but the words alone hinted at the sect's extraordinary nature. It was clear that a genuine sect inheritance existed here. If someone could obtain it, they could certainly rise above others on this ancient battlefield. Perhaps, within that sect inheritance, there might even be spirit martial arts coveted by all. Thinking of this, many eyes burned with fervor. Their gazes shifted to the area outside the glow, where three figures stood. Each of the three held a unique token that emitted a faint light. many eyes greedily fixed on the tokens in their hands. But when their gazes moved to the three individuals, there was a hint of mocking glee. Amidst the watchful eyes of wolves and tigers, these three figures were like helpless lambs, waiting to be slaughtered. The three figures were, of course, Mo Ling and his two companions, who had obtained the sect marks. At this moment, their faces were grim as they looked up at the various dynasties and powerful individuals in the sky, all of whom had their eyes locked onto them. The excitement from obtaining the sect marks had long since disappeared in this tense situation. They knew very well that if they dared to make even the slightest move, countless lethal attacks would likely rain down on them, leaving nothing behind. The situation had escalated beyond their expectations. Mo Ling and his companions had initially come here to try their luck, never expecting to inadvertently acquire the sect marks and thereby activate the hidden sect ruins. This, in turn, attracted the dynasties and powerhouses from all around. Their initial joy had quickly turned into cold dread as these powerful dynasties appeared. The mocking gazes from the strong felt like needles piercing their skin. If not for the increasing number of dynasties and powerhouses arriving, someone would have already tried to take the marks by force, and things would not have dragged on until now. What should we do? Under the countless mocking stares, Du Yun, one of the three, couldn't help but force a bitter smile as he looked to Mo Ling for guidance. All three of them were now at the half-step nirvana stage, just a step away from the nirvana stage, but they knew that in their current predicament, their strength offered no protection whatsoever. Mo Ling's expression was somber, his fists tightening and loosening repeatedly, a trace of helplessness in his eyes. In this situation, they seemed to have no chance of resistance at all. We've been holding out here for so long, the news should have spread. If Brother Lin Dong hears about it, he'll definitely come, the tall and sturdy man Shan said, scratching his head. This situation doesn't look good. If Lin Dong comes, he might get dragged into this mess. He's already helped us a lot, Mo Ling smiled bitterly. If it really doesn't work out, we should hand over the marks. Our lives are more important than these things. If we can't obtain the inheritance, it simply means we aren't destined for it, Du Yun sighed. If we have to give them up, we won't let these guys get them easily. Mo Ling's eyes flashed with a cold glint. He suddenly looked up at the closest group of four forces. These were four high-tier dynasties, each not weaker than the demonic rock dynasty. The leaders of these four dynasties were genuine first nirvana stage experts, and it was said that they were all qualified to attempt the second nirvana tribulation. In this area, they were undoubtedly the strongest presence. Hee, what's this? Changed your mind? A man in green clothing from one of the four high-tier dynasties chuckled mockingly when Mo Ling looked up. I know the three of us don't have the ability to keep these sect marks. If you want them, then they're yours, Mo Ling said expressionlessly, pausing for a moment before continuing. But there are only 3 sect marks. How do you plan to distribute them? As soon as Mo Ling finished speaking, the atmosphere between the 4 high-tier dynasties subtly tensed. The 4 first nirvana stage experts narrowed their eyes slightly. The tension lingered for a moment. Then the man in green sneered at Mo Ling. Trying to sow discord? Not a bad tactic. How we distribute them is none of your concern. Hand over the sect marks obediently, and don't waste our limited patience. A man with a dark expression extended his hand and shouted. Seeing that the other side seemed to be aware of his intentions, Mo Ling's eyes grew colder. But indeed, he had no other options. He exchanged a glance with Du Yun and the other, and reluctantly tossed the sect marks away. As the 3 sect marks flew out, a fervent light flickered in the eyes of the 4 high-tier dynasties. Yet, none of them made a move, as they understood that displaying any dissent at this moment could result in the other 3 attacking simultaneously. Given that their strengths were evenly matched, going 1 against 3 would certainly be suicidal. Under countless gazes, the 3 sect marks gradually floated toward the 4 high-tier dynasties. However, just as they seemed to reach an unspoken agreement and were about to grab the marks, a gust of wind suddenly swept through the air, striking the 3 sect marks with precision. A muffled sound followed, and the 3 sect marks shot back, once again hovering in front of Mo Ling and his companions, much to their astonishment. Who dares? Show yourself. Seeing the marks they were about to obtain fly away again, the leaders of the 4 high-tier dynasties turned dark with anger. Their voices, filled with killing intent, echoed across the island. Even though my Great Yan Dynasty is just a low-tier dynasty, do you really think you can take what you want so easily? You're overestimating yourselves. A calm voice suddenly echoed through the air, drawing countless gazes toward the 2 figures who had appeared out of nowhere in midair. Lin Dong. Upon seeing the person leading the pair, Mo Ling and his 2 companions exclaimed in surprise, their eyes immediately lighting up with joy and excitement. On this floating island, countless eyes instantly focused on the 2 figures who had suddenly appeared. Many were astonished that someone dared to interfere in the affairs of the 4 high-tier dynasties. At the same time, Mo Ling and his companions recognized Lin Dong, their eyes brimming with excitement. However, they quickly regained their composure, their excitement replaced by a wave of anxiety. They knew that Lin Dong's reputation had grown significantly recently, to the point where even the demonic rock dynasty could do nothing against him. But now, these 4 high-tier dynasties were each no weaker than the demonic rock dynasty. If they joined forces, even Lin Dong might be in danger. Are you Lin Dong? As Mo Ling and his companions' expression shifted, a man dressed in blue from one of the 4 high-tier dynasties recognized Lin Dong's face. His expression changed abruptly, and he spoke in a low voice. Oh? So this is the guy who dared to challenge the demonic rock dynasty, Lin Dong? He doesn't seem all that impressive. Another leader from a high-tier dynasty sneered as he glanced at Lin Dong. The other 2 leaders of the high-tier dynasties, however, did not mock him like the others. Instead, their expressions grew serious. This reaction left the man who had sneered earlier somewhat stunned, and his expression turned slightly displeased as he coldly said, Lin Dong, don't think that just because the demonic rock dynasty couldn't handle you, you're strong enough to meddle here. This matter is not something you can interfere with. Leave now, and we might still overlook your intrusion. These sect marks are meant for those destined to have them. Since my 3 friends obtained them, they should be entitled to the inheritance. Your actions are a bit overbearing, Lin Dong replied calmly, ignoring the man who had sneered. Hearing this, the expressions of the 3 men, including the one in blue, changed slightly. The man who had sneered earlier became furious and shouted, Boy, don't bring trouble upon yourself. You've already made yourself a pariah by offending the demonic rock dynasty. I've heard that Shikuan has broken through to the 2nd Nirvana stage. If he finds out about you, you'll be as good as dead. And now you dare to act arrogant here? Upon hearing these words, the 3 men, including the one in blue, couldn't help but twitch slightly, their gazes turning strange as they glanced at the speaker. Lin Dong was momentarily taken aback by this remark, then shook his head with a wry smile. It seemed this guy hadn't heard the news of Shikuan being severely injured by him, which explained the odd contrast with the expressions of the 3 men beside him. Brother Lin Dong, we don't need these sect marks anymore. Let's give them to them and leave. Seeing the strange atmosphere, Mo Ling's eyes flashed with anxiety as he called out loudly. They, too, were unaware of the shocking event that had occurred recently. So, when they saw signs of Lin Dong intending to challenge the 4 high-tier dynasties, they quickly tried to stop him, fearing that he might get into more trouble because of them. Heh, at least your 3 friends are sensible. Hand over the sect marks and get out of here quickly, sneered Qin San, the leader of the Great Forest Dynasty. He was already at the peak of the 1st Nirvana stage, and was a candidate for attempting the 2nd Nirvana tribulation. Thus, he spoke with little regard for Lin Dong. The leaders of the other 3 high-tier dynasties exchanged glances but, curiously, remained silent. They neither mocked nor stopped Qin San from speaking. Lin Dong glanced at the 4 leaders, instantly understanding their thoughts. It seemed that these 3 men had already received news about him severely injuring Shikuan, which is why they had restrained their arrogance. However, they were still reluctant to give up the sect marks so easily. Thus, they let Qin San provoke Lin Dong, testing his strength. After all, even though they had heard the shocking news, there was still a bit of doubt in their hearts. Now that Qin San had taken the initiative to probe, they were more than happy to observe the outcome. Lin Dong made a gesture with his hand, and the sect marks floating in front of Mo Ling and his companions flew into his hand. Seeing this, Qin San thought Lin Dong was about to hand them over, and a cold smile spread even wider across his face. The marks are here. If you can take them, they're yours. However, Lin Dong did not throw the sect marks over as Qin San had expected. Instead, he tossed them lightly, allowing them to float in front of him. He then looked at Qin San with a teasing glint in his eyes. You dare to toy with me? Qin San's face immediately darkened upon hearing this, a faint murderous intent flickering in his eyes. Mo Ling and his companions felt a tightness in their chests. Things had escalated to this point, and there seemed to be no point in backing down anymore. They could only sigh inwardly. Since Lin Dong had made his stance clear, they naturally had to follow suit. Brat, it seems a bit of fame has gone to your head. You've forgotten your place. Fine. I'll teach you today how to conduct yourself properly. Qin San's eyes grew cold as his figure suddenly shot forward. A powerful surge of primordial energy erupted from his body, displaying the peak strength of a first Nirvana stage expert. One had to admit, Qin San was quite strong, even stronger than Shi Xian. Even Shi Kuan, before his attempt at the second Nirvana tribulation, could only be considered on par with him. It was no wonder Qin San wasn't too wary of Lin Dong. However, he was unaware that the intelligence he had received was already woefully outdated. In the blink of an eye, Qin San's figure appeared before Lin Dong. With a powerful punch, his primordial energy condensed into a mighty lion, roaring as it charged at Lin Dong. At the same time, Qin San's other hand reached out, attempting to snatch the 3 sect marks. Qin San's plan seemed flawless. In his view, his full-force punch should be enough to force Lin Dong back. He could then seize the sect marks and teach Lin Dong a lesson. Boom. However, reality can be cruel. In the face of Qin San's full-strength attack, Lin Dong merely reached out with his hand, grabbing the primordial energy lion. With a light squeeze, there was a cracking sound, and the majestic lion of primordial energy shattered instantly. With such meager skills, you dare act so arrogantly? What a disgrace. Crushing Qin San's full-force strike with ease, Lin Dong shook his head. Then, before Qin San could react, Lin Dong's hand swung through the air. A violent gust of wind erupted like a storm, striking Qin San's face with lightning speed. A crisp sound echoed, and Qin San spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with 2 teeth. His body spun several times in midair under the shocked gazes of countless onlookers before landing awkwardly on the floating island. The spectators, who had initially been eager to watch the show, were stunned, their mouths slightly agape in disbelief. None of them had expected that Qin San, a first Nirvana stage expert, would be sent flying by a single slap from Lin Dong. Gulp. Mo Ling and his companions, who had been full of worry moments ago, couldn't help but swallow nervously. Their eyes trembled as they stared at Lin Dong. It had only been 2 or 3 months since they last saw him, but Lin Dong's strength seemed to have far surpassed theirs, reaching a level that they could only look up to. The 3 men, including the one in blue, also gazed at this scene with complex and fearful expressions. They glanced at Lin Dong, hovering midair, their arms involuntarily trembling. It seemed the news they had received was indeed true. For Lin Dong to slap Qin San, who was at the peak of the first Nirvana stage, like a dog, his strength was such that it was not so hard to believe he had defeated Shi Kuan, who had stepped into the second Nirvana stage. On the island, Qin San's face was covered in blood, his eyes filled with disbelief. He looked at Lin Dong in a state of disarray, and then glanced at the 3 men in blue who had remained silent the whole time. It seemed he had figured something out, and his expression turned incredibly sour. Indeed, Shi Kuan has reached the second Nirvana stage, as you mentioned. I have encountered him myself. In the future, the demonic rock dynasty will likely be more restrained, so you don't need to worry about me being hunted down like a stray dog. Lin Dong looked down at Qin San from above, his tone calm and unwavering. Today, these sect marks were obtained by my 3 friends first. By any standard of reason or fairness, you have no grounds to seize them. Gentlemen, do you agree with what I've said? Lin Dong's gaze finally shifted to the 3 men in blue who had remained silent throughout the confrontation. Under Lin Dong's scrutiny, The three men in blue twitched slightly before forcing a dry smile and nodding, saying, "So these three are Brother Lin Dong's friends. In that case, we naturally have nothing more to say." Those around them saw the three high-tier dynasties back down so readily and felt a wave of shock in their hearts. Coupled with what Lin Dong had just said, a trace of fear flashed in their eyes. Everyone knew about the feud between Lin Dong and the demonic rock dynasty. If Shikuan had truly reached the second nirvana stage, he would surely have sought out Lin Dong for revenge, leading to a deadly battle. But Lin Dong was still here, alive and well, which clearly indicated that Shikuan, even after reaching the second nirvana stage, had lost the fight. Realizing this, many people secretly took a deep breath. No wonder the three high-tier dynasties didn't dare to say much. Even Shikuan, who had reached the second nirvana stage, was defeated by Lin Dong. Even if they all attacked together, they might not gain any advantage against him. Some people quietly smacked their lips in disbelief, their eyes passing over the three floating sect marks in midair before finally resting on Mo Ling and his companions. They couldn't help but marvel at how these three from a low-tier dynasty could have such a powerful backer. The atmosphere in the field remained tense, but no one voiced any objections. Seeing this, Lin Dong smiled faintly. Just as he was about to reach out and take the three sect marks, his sweeping gaze suddenly froze. He slowly turned his head and saw several figures standing on a mountain peak behind the ancient sect hall, watching him with great interest. Lin Dong's eyes swept over the figures, finally stopping with a hint of surprise on a familiar, graceful silhouette. The seductive and delicate face belonged to the woman in the red dress he had encountered back at Thunder Rock Valley. It seemed her name was Mu Hongling.